um, the first lecture on physiological psych, Psych 255, section 31. There's only one section. This is spring 2024. That's me. I'm Dr. Bruce M. Bradway, and this is where I live. I live in Lost Nation, Iowa. We're about 35 miles from the Mississippi River, right about in the middle of the state. We're directly west of Chicago, about 200 miles, maybe 150, 200 miles. This is my telephone number if you ever need to get a hold of me. I have office hours 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Monday and Tuesday is between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, your time, mountain time, and Wednesday and Thursday is 8 to 10 in the morning, mountain time. For me, it's an hour later. This is the Zoom address, 989-005-04545. It's been that way for a couple of years. Nobody has told me I can't do it, so let's go ahead and keep that Zoom address. So anytime you need to talk to me, you can Zoom in between 3 and 5 on Monday, Tuesday, or 8 to 10. Wednesday and Thursday. Or you can just email me. Here's my email address. You can email me and ask me what's going on. Ask me if I can turn the Zoom on, and I'll be glad to do it any time of the day. That includes late at night, early in the morning, doesn't matter. I'm always available. So there you go. This is the textbook we're using right now. This is the 2016 textbook. I think there's a later edition. There's an earlier edition. It's all the same so far. I haven't really found that much of a difference between the editions at this point. Okay, and there's our schedule. It's a 15-week semester. I hope everything's correct. So how do you pass the class? Well, we're going to have a quiz on each chapter. There's 18 chapters. So that's 360 points. There's a library paper that'll be due about anything that's in the book. That's an additional 100 points. And then there are 15 article critiques that you need to do, one for each week. An article critique is you critiquing a piece of research, and what I'm talking about when I say research is a study that has been done on individuals of some ilk. Usually humans, sometimes it's rats, and sometimes it's pigeons, but as long as it is research. A lot of times you'll find an article that talks about what you want them to talk about, but it's not research. It's just an information article. That's not what I'm looking for. I need a research article. We're looking for newer research. Could be old classic research. That's fine. So that's how you accumulate all of these points throughout the semester. It's a lot of work. So I would suggest that you don't put it off. You can put it off if you have an emergency that occurs. You can't get it done this week. Just make it up the next week. I do not count off for late work. So you have all semester to get your work in. Your library paper is 5 pages of text. I do count lines. You need 115, I think. 115 lines. Has to be a 12 font. Try not to send me a PDF. I can convert it. I will convert it. I have to because I can't grade it otherwise. So if a document, a Word document is easiest for me to grade. I'm an old English teacher. That was my first degree is in English. So I will correct your grammar. Do not use artificial intelligence. Do not use ChatGPT. That is not writing. That is copying. So I consider it thus. So don't do it. Okay. You can, if you turn in a paper before the 17th of March, I will look it over and I will correct, I will correct your references and whatnot. Everything needs to be in APA format. You can find out what APA format looks like. I hope you already know. You probably do because you needed to use it in Psych 111, Psych 202. Dr. Barber is good at giving us that information. If you need to look something up, the Purdue OWL, this is the address for the Purdue OWL for the APA format. We are in our seventh iteration of the APA journal or the APA manual. It means a lot to us, but not to anybody else. There's a rubric that I use to grade your papers. If you use ChatGPT, the problem is your ideas are not, you don't develop your own ideas, so you don't get any points there. And the critical thing, you don't have any critical thinking because it's the robot's critical thinking. So the grammar's good, and your references. And sometimes I'll tell you what, ChatGPT makes up references. Drives me crazy. Anyway, and your length should be okay. And hopefully the citations are all right. But that's still not a passing grade. Okay, so the article critiques has to be a research article, not an information article. You need to answer these questions. Brief summary of the article. What was the hypothesis or research question? What type of study was it? Was it qualitative, quantitative, or a mixture of both? Then you describe how they did the study. A lot of times this will be in the abstract, and that's fine. You can't get all the information from the abstract, but you can get a lot of that information from the abstract. What type of sample it was is important. How many there were. What was the target population? A lot of times the target population is a college population. So that's important. How were they selected? It's another question you need to answer. And of course, I want you to at least understand the article. So was there any bias in the sample selection? A lot of times people cheat. Republicans cheat when they do surveys, as do Democrats, because they only select their own people to query, to survey. And then you need to tell me what happened and whether it was statistically significant. And then you have to write the reference in a APA format, which is very important because we're trying to teach you how to use APA format. So it's very important. And that's about it. There's your due dates. Okay, just one. Okay. And here's where I attack artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. I know some of your instructors are saying, it's okay, at least their grammar is correct. I consider it cheating, and I think you're cheating yourself, actually, worse than anything else. The way you learn to write is to write. The way you learn to think is to think. And if you let a robot do it, then you ain't thinking and you ain't writing. It may be a good paper. Probably it might be. The problem is that ChatGPT gets all of its information. What it does, it accumulates information from the internet. So none of it's new ideas. None of it's your ideas. It's just an amalgamation of what it reads on the internet. And sometimes it may not agree with you because I can assure you that most of the information on the internet is not written by indigenous people. Some of it may be, but most of it isn't. That means that people in Europe are going to be, you're going to be repeating what people in Europe say. You're going to be repeating what people in China and Japan and India say. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot more people in China and India than there are in the United States. So, something to think about. Okay. I'm not here to flunk you. I'm here to help you. Okay. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was thinking, these textbooks. People read the textbooks and they think, well, that's all the information I need about this subject. But the reality is, your textbook is just a starting point. It should make you question things. It should make you curious, and you should take it farther than that. So it's just a starting point. It's like, oh, I need to go to Europe, and I'm standing here at the airport in Chicago. Uh, what do I do now? That's the textbook, is you in Chicago getting on the airplane. That's it. That's all it is. So you wandering around London, you walking around Paris, you uh, going to the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. That's your own thoughts. That's you doing something. The airplane has taken you over there. That's the textbook. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, anyway, okay. There you go. You can find the syllabus online, of course, under assignments, um, if you need to look at it. So let's go ahead and get started on today's lecture. It's a short chapter, so this shouldn't take very long. Biological Psychology, Chapter 1. Is it biological psychology or physiological psychology? I've been in a debate as to which one is which and whether they're both the same thing, and I consider them both biological psychology and physiological psychology pretty close to each other, close enough that it's kind of silly to argue about it. But here we go. Biological psychology. Biological psychology seeks to explain behavior in terms of its underlying physiology, its development, its evolution, and its function. A central premise of biological psychology is that bodily processes, particularly those of the nervous system, are the basis of all behavior. Biological psychology is multidisciplinary in scope and draws on knowledge produced in diverse scientific fields in an effort to produce integrated descriptions of the generation of behavior. It includes psychologists, biologists, physiologists, engineers, neurologists. It's multidisciplinary, and that's kind of exciting for me because I'm something of a generalist. My PhD is in general psychology. So what does that mean? Well, there are people that study psychology and they want to be they want to be school counselors, and they focus on educational psychology. So their degree is in educational psychology. Dr. Russ's degree is in educational psychology. There are people that want to be counselors, and that would be uh, Dr. Marilyn Begay. Her degree is in counseling psychology. As I said, I'm a general psychologist. Dr. Barber just finished his PhD earlier this year. Oh, this is 2024, late last last year, and his degree is in forensic psychology, I think. Maybe his master's degree is in forensic psychology. Anyway, yeah, he's a forensic psychologist. Okay, so, but a generalist looks at all of these things. Now, the reality is that, yes, I have a PhD in general psychology. I also have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I also have a master's degree in international relations, which is a branch of political science. I have a bachelor's degree in English. That's why. And I have worked as an English teacher. And I have an associate's degree in medical laboratory technology, which makes me relatively multidisciplinary since I have degrees in 4 different areas. And of course, these are the areas of biological psychology. My son has a master's degree in computer science. Actually, it's data processing and mathematics. My daughter has a master's degree in kinesiology, and I don't see it on here. So I guess anatomy is close. And she teaches anatomy at the college level, so there you go. So anyway, yeah, cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychologists are a specific branch of psychology. They're kind of interesting people. Dr. Kine, who put together the psychology program, was a cognitive psychologist. They do a lot of research. Anyway, so all of these things, I'm pretty interested in it in anyway. So let's go ahead and, oh, okay. Well, I can't remember why I have that picture out there. It's from an old lecture. That's Catherine Mary Stewart. She's an actress. Um, yeah, anyway, she's an actress. Whoops, wrong direction. Observation at all possible levels. This requires an analysis of many levels from molecular to macro, activity to interaction with the environment. And of course, we have different people interpreting what's going on. Why did they behave the way that they did? We have different people. We have all of these people looking at behavior and saying, well, as far as I'm concerned, this is what I see. And you have somebody else saying, well, yes, I see that, but as far as the micro level, this is what has happened. As far as the macro level is concerned, they were treated this way at some point in their development. Therefore, they reacted in this different way. And so that's how we are trying to get to trying to determine why people react the way that they do. The 5 viewpoints of biology of behavior. Just the first thing we do is describe the behavior. Somebody has taken a AR-15 and sprayed in a bar and has killed 5 people. Study the evolution of the behavior. Where did it come from? Have they used this weapon before? Were they trained on a rifle? Have they threatened people before? Why in the world have they done this? And the third is observing the development of the behavior and its biological characteristics over the lifespan. And of course, we would have to determine why, when they first picked up a weapon, what type of anger they have, what they've said on the internet, studying the biological mechanisms of the behavior, what has allowed them to do this. A lot of times you'll find out, oh, wait a minute, the guy had a brain tumor or something. And studying the applications of biological psychology, or in other words, the dysfunctions or the lack of function. And of course, we would have to look at other individuals who had done exactly the same thing to determine if there is a biological aspect to it so that we can stop it from happening in the future. Before a scientist can do any research on biological function, they must decide and describe the function that they will research. And I think the reason I have this picture is because the golden, what is that? O'Donnell, that's what it says. This is a brothel in Denver, and that was the behavior that I was thinking about when I put the picture in here. So if we were trying to determine why prostitution occurs, there you go. We can take it all the way back to 19th century Denver. By comparing species, scientists can speculate how behavior and neural structures have changed as species have evolved. And the idea, of course, if you don't believe in evolution, then looking at other species doesn't make any sense. But if you do believe in evolution, then we can look at this behavior in animals, in lower animal forms, and we can see how it has changed over time. Now, what were we talking about? Prostitution? Okay, we'll talk about prostitution. There are animals who, chimpanzees, for example, will have sex for food, and other animals will do it will do that as well. So there is a biological aspect to prostitution that goes back in our evolutionary past. As an individual grows, they develop the ability to respond to stimuli. As the organism becomes more and more complex and other variables are introduced, behavior and response will change. This is known as ontogeny, how an individual changes over a lifetime. So it has to do, ontogeny just means change or the study of change. The history of a species tells us the evolutionary determinants of its behavior. The history of an individual tells us the developmental determinants. The scientist must regard the organism as a machine made up of billions of neurons. And the reason I have this picture here is because this is a bust of Cleopatra or Nefertiti. I think it's Nefertiti. Anyway, when somebody looks at this picture, they have mapped which parts they look at, and these are the focus in this when they look at this picture. Is the eye and the ear. As you can see, there's the ear and there's the eye. And of course, they're trying to determine how long the neck is. They're trying to determine what the world is going on up here. They see the point of the back of the head. They see they're looking at the mouth. They're trying to determine what this individual looks like. They're looking at the eye, the ear, and the mouth specifically, and the back of the head. And of course, it's just a sculpture. A major goal of biological psychology is to use research findings to improve the health and well-being of humans and other animals. Numerous human diseases involve malfunctioning of the brain. In this case, this individual suffers from Down syndrome. This is what they looked like when they were a child. This is what they looked like when they were a toddler. This is what they looked like as a child. This is what they looked like. I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure, when they were an adult and then as they got older. So how they changed over time. And what happened with the brain functioning. One of the things we have been able to do over the last 74 years. I'm 74 years old. Over the last 74 years, we have, when I first started studying psychology, it was really kind of interesting. One of the things that has changed markedly is the concept of autism. When I first started studying psychology, started teaching psychology, one of the things I told my students was an individual suffering from autism has a 70% chance of not being verbal. In other words, never learning to speak. And now, of course, it's much, much lower than that. It's not nearly 70%. It's closer to 10%. Why? Because of some of the studies that they've done and some of the work that has gone into helping these individuals learn to focus on something other than themselves. Before, they were just being left alone because they wouldn't respond very well to people. So people just left them alone, and they, of course, they never learned to speak. But now, with more intense interaction between them and their caregivers, they are living much more rich lives. And so one of the things that has happened is that we are learning about how the brain has a malfunction and what we can do to assist the individual in living a more normal life. And of course, the same thing has happened with Down syndrome. Down syndrome was considered a very severe intellectual deficit before, and now we know that there are aspects of Down syndrome that, yes, the brain, it doesn't function as well, but with training and with care, uh, the individual can become a more reactive individual, and they're living longer lives. There are three ways to look at a brain behavior relations. The somatic intervention changes the body, changes the behavior. What changes the body in the body changes behavior. Somatic means body. So anytime you see the word soma, they're talking about the body. Behavioral interventions, psychological changes occur, and this changes body function, structure, or function. Depression, for example, changes how the body functions. Because somebody's depressed, they have less, they're less active, they become more sedentary. And of course, one thing feeds the other. The more sedentary they are, the more depressed they get. So behavioral intervention, psychological changes change the body function as well. And correlation, how do changes in somatic variables affect behavioral variables? So as the body changes, you've got a damage to somebody's back. They're in fairly frequent pain. How does that change how will that change their body? And of course, we've all had our little problems with backs and knees and whatnot, and because of that, it has changed the amount that we how active we are and the things that we do. Before you were running, before you hurt your knee, you were running 5 miles a day, and now that you have hurt your knee, you have a hard time walking across the room. So that the things have one thing has changed the other. If we increase testosterone in a male, will it increase his sexual response? Can we cause the same effect by electrically stimulating his brain? If we cut his vagus nerve, will he lack sexual response? And I'm going to answer all those questions right now. If we increase testosterone in a male, will it increase his sexual response? And the answer is yes. Testosterone in the not in just the male, but also in the female. Now we know that it's the testosterone in the hypothalamus that creates the individual's sex drive. So if we increase testosterone, it will increase the sexual response in both males and females, as interesting as that is. Can we cause the same effect by electrically stimulating the brain? Yes, we can stimulate areas of the hypothalamus, and that will change the sexual response. If we cut the vagus nerve, will he lack sexual response? And the answer is no. No, sexual response is how can I say this? The vagus nerve is runs from your brain into your gut, and yes, it has to do with the sexual response, but your sexual response is in your pelvic region, and it is a spinal cord response. So if somebody's a quadriplegic, they can still respond sexually. But what happens in the brain doesn't communicate with what's going on someplace else in the pelvic region. If we put two adults of opposite sex together, will it lead to an increased secretion of certain hormones? And the answer is yes. It's a natural response between that has to do with human response. It's not just humans, of course. It's other animals. You probably have noticed that sheep, cows, males. You try to keep the males and females apart a lot or more because they react differently. If you've got dogs, female dogs act one way, and male dogs will act totally different. Male dogs will run together because they are trying to protect the pack. Female dogs will kind of stay in the middle of things and allow the male dogs to protect them. Female dogs will protect their puppies, and cats are kind of the same way. It's interesting because male dogs and female dogs uh, will kind of stay away from each other until it's time to reproduce. It's time for the female to get pregnant. So they'll kind of stay away from each other. Males will usually do not attack females, but they will attack each other. Okay. Can we change blood flow to the brain with select visual stimuli? This is true. We've proven at this point that certain stimuli is males are more reactive to this than females. But that's one of the reasons is because of the higher testosterone level. Is the male sex drive stronger than the female sex drive? And the answer is no. Um, Society allows males to react more strongly to sexual stimuli than females, but the reality is it has to do with your hypothalamus, and it takes less um, testosterone for a female response. If we change the circumstance of the interaction to include dangerous stimulation, will it cause a change in the response of the individuals? And of course, that's a famous study that was done, and the answer is yes. Looking at people with frequent sexual response, we find higher levels of hormones, and the answer is probably no. That really doesn't have anything to do. One thing doesn't really have to do with the other. Somebody seems to be oversexed. That's probably is a social situation rather than a hormonal situation. Can we correlate high levels of hormones with frequent sexual response? And the answer is yes. The human brain and its peripheral neuronal structures can change with stimulation from the environment. This is known as neuroplasticity. Parts of neurons called dendritic spines seem to be in constant motion and can change shape in a matter of seconds. In a very real way, other individuals can affect change on the structure of an individual's brain. Stimulation will induce neuronal growth. Lack of stimulation will retard neuronal growth. And that is really important that we are trying to. So the more stimulation you get, the more you read, the more you watch, potentially, the more that you learn. The more stimulation you get, the greater your brain growth. But reaction is what is needed. You need to react to things. Watching screens, TikTok, YouTube. A lot of times that is sedentary reactions. You're not really. It's not the same thing. Curiosity, and it needs to create curiosity in your mind. Researchers have been able to induce the brains of human subjects to be more active by suggesting to select individuals that water that they would be dipping their hands in would be hot. And this is a famous study. Subjects who did not experience the suggestion had less active brain activity and reported less discomfort from the water. Let's see what this is.
Tourists. Tourists that turn into scientists. Tourists taking photos that are analyzed by AI. So researchers can help life underwater flourish. Being human. We each view ourselves as a unique and independent individual. But we're never alone. Millions of microscopic beings inhabit our bodies, and no two bodies are the same. Each is a different habitat for microbial communities, from the arid deserts of our skin to the villages on our lips and the cities in our mouths. Even every tooth is its own distinctive neighborhood. And our guts are teeming metropolises of interacting microbes. And in these bustling streets of our guts, we see a constant influx of food, and every microbe has a job to do. Here's a cellulitic bacteria, for example. Their one job is to break down cellulose, a common compound in vegetables, into sugars. Those simple sugars then move along to the respirators, another set of microbes that snatch up these simple sugars and burn them as fuel. As food travels through our digestive tract, it reaches the fermenters who extract energy from these sugars by converting them into chemicals like alcohol and hydrogen gas, which they spew out as waste products. Deeper in the depths of our gut city, the syntrophs eke out a living off the fermenter's trash. At each step of this process, energy is released, and that energy is absorbed by the cells of the digestive tract. This city we just saw is different in everyone. Every person has a unique and diverse community of gut microbes that can process food in different ways. One person's gut microbes may be capable of releasing only a fraction of the calories that another person's gut microbes can extract. So what determines the membership of our gut microbial community? Well, things like our genetic makeup and the microbes we encounter throughout our lives can contribute to our microbial ecosystems. The food we eat also influences which microbes live in our gut. For example, food made of complex molecules like an apple requires a lot of different microbial workers to break it down. But if a food is made of simple molecules like a lollipop, some of these workers are put out of a job. Those workers leave the city, never to return. What doesn't function well are gut microbial communities with only a few different types of workers. For example, humans who suffer from diseases like diabetes or chronic gut inflammation typically have less microbial variety in their guts. We don't fully understand the best way to manage our individual microbial societies, but it is likely that lifestyle changes, such as eating a varied diet of complex plant-based foods, can help revitalize our microbial ecosystems in our gut and across the entire landscape of our body. So we are really not alone in our body. Our bodies are homes to millions of different microbes, and we need them just as much as they need us. As we learn more about how our microbes interact with each other and with our bodies, we will reveal how we can nurture this complex invisible world that shapes our personal identity, our health, and our well-being.
Okay. That's known as a biome. We are a biome. The reality is that we have more bacteria in our bodies than we have cells, individual cells. So the reality is that we are literally what we eat. We are literally where we have been. If you've only been in one place in the world, if you've only been in one place, then potentially your biome is not as complex. If you eat the same food over and over and over again, you will not accumulate the bacteria that you need in order to be healthy in your future. I have two nieces who lived in Chicago, which is a fairly uh, a fairly complex area, but they didn't eat very well when they were children. Their mother, my sister, big dummy, allowed them to be picky eaters. So they would only eat French fries, cheese pizza, um, um, link sausage for breakfast, and drink Coke. That's all they would eat. They wouldn't eat anything else. If my mother tried to feed them, their grandmother tried to feed them milk, they would throw up. If they gave them something else, they would pretend wouldn't eat it, or they would be sick. Uh, Now, whether this was real or just them being spoiled, that's a question. We always thought they were being spoiled. Well, they're both in their 40s now, and both of them are suffering from metabolic diseases. Why are they suffering from metabolic diseases? Well, neither one of them has ever been any place. They've never really traveled that much, and both of them have problems, metabolic problems that will probably shorten their lives. And the reason is because of their diet from when they were children. And they really haven't changed very much. They're both very still very picky eaters, and no one has forced them to eat good food. They still won't eat anything green, and that's the way they're going to die young, or at least younger than they would have had they eaten a more complex diet. Um, I never get sick. I never get sick. But I've lived all over the world, and I also was a laboratory technician. So I came in contact with a lot of different viruses, a lot of different bacteria. So I came in contact with a lot of uh, dangerous bacteria and viruses that potentially could have damaged me a great deal. And since I came in contact with it, that may have given me immunity. And I don't get colds, I don't get sick. Um, I don't catch the flu. I didn't have COVID. I never have colds. I never get the flu. Anyway, I never get sick, which is kind of fun. And I'm 74 years old, and my immune system theoretically should be weaker. And my immune system, especially, should be weaker because I don't have a spleen, which is part of your immune system. I lost my spleen in a soccer game in 1985, and they said, well, when when they did a splenectomy, when they took out my spleen, they told me, well, this is probably cutting your life by about 10 years because your immune system will be less sensitive and you won't be able to fight off diseases like other people. But well, I don't get sick, and I'm 74 years old. I'm doing okay. So we are all the bacteria that we eat, that we have consumed. We are all the bacteria that we have been around throughout our lives. We are the food that we eat, and the more complex foods like the apple that the individual was eating, the better off we are. If we just take in, uh, actually, apples are simple sugars. They're monosaccharides. They have a single molecule of sugar. Disaccharides, the sugar that you see in the sugar bowl, the sugar that you see in the corn syrup, that you see in candies, in the lollipop the kid was eating. That is more complex sugars, and they're harder to break down. But if that's all you're eating, then that is what your body is trains itself to take care of. And you need the more complex sugars, the cellulose in the apple, for example. And that's one of the reasons why you need to eat vegetables and fruits. It's good to consume them because they will increase the complexity of the microbes in your stomach. So there you go. How about that? Many times, psychological research follows a plan of reductionism. The researchers begin with a general behavioral reaction and then follow it from the behavior to the central nervous system. Looking at the response in the brain, they locate the area of the brain affected. From the affected area, they isolate the single nerves that are affected. They then will look at the chemical changes that take place in the neuron. Using the technique of reductionism, researchers can break down the complex mechanism that leads to brain malfunctions. About 19% of all Americans suffer from some form of psychiatric disorder. Another 3.2% suffer from some neurological disorder. Alzheimer's disease is the fastest growing affliction in the industrialized societies. And you may ask yourself, why is Alzheimer's disease increasing? Is it the fact that we're being poisoned by plastics or poisoned by aluminum? And the answer is no. It's because people are living longer and they're more likely since they are living longer, they're more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease. There's a lot of problems, potential problems that happen with old age. If you are a male, my doctor told me that all men over 50 suffer from prostatitis. In other words, they have a swelling of their prostate gland, which is part of your reproductive system. And Yeah, they just said that's the way it works. And it's the same way with Alzheimer's disease. If you live to be in your 80s, then you probably suffer from some form of dementia. Your brain naturally, you're not really supposed to. People used to not live that long. They lived into their 40s and 50s. This is really kind of interesting because when I was a child, I used to read the newspaper. When I was younger, I read the newspaper, and in those days, I read the obituaries because I was wondering how long my parents would live. I know this is kind of morbid, but I was trying to determine, well, will they be here for my high school graduation? How long should I live, or will I live? And at that time, when I was born, the life expectancy for someone in 1949 was about 59 years. Well, I'm 74 right now, but the life expectancy has increased with better diets and with fewer stupidity like smoking and drinking. There's less of that taking place, and tobacco takes. Well, and we're going to talk about tobacco, but it's really really destructive. Uh, Whether it's being smoked or whether it's being snuffed or chewed or whatever. However you're taking it in, it's really destructive. And marijuana, of course, is equally destructive to the human body. So uh, marijuana's problem seems to be that it causes different types of cancers. What are we talking about? Okay, prevalence of neurological disorders. The highest is Alzheimer's disease. I don't seem to have, wait a second. I don't have my arrow. There it is. Alzheimer's disease is number one, epilepsy is number two, strokes is number three. Here's Parkinson's disease at 500,000, early developmental disorders 750,000, head and spinal cord trauma 1 million, stroke 1.8 million, Alzheimer's disease 3 million. Incidence of psychiatric disorders, the number one problem is self-induced. No, it's not. It's severe anxiety is number one. Schizophrenia, 16 million severe anxiety. Alcohol is second with 15 million. And this affects 19% of the population. So as you can see, 15 million of this chunk, some of it is self-induced. They're all mental illnesses, of course, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, but alcohol and drug abuse is something that you choose to do, or you can choose not to do it. You certainly can't choose not to be depressed or not to have schizophrenia or not to be anxious. That is a biochemical reaction. And there is a degree of biochemical reaction to alcohol and drug abuse as well, but you still have to start it. And you can't slow down. Much of the research dealing with psychology is done on other species. By comparing the reactions of other species, researchers are able to judge how humans will react in similar situations. 93% of animals used in research are some form of rodent. Usually it's rats. Because we have been able to hybridize rats to the extent that we know all their genetic makeup and how they're going to react to things. As nasty as that is, I'm not a rat person. I do not like rodents. And this is a joke. Okay, so this research is true though. All of these, killed during escape attempt, that's not real. Cancer research is fairly high. Genetic disease research is very high. Neurological research is very high. Weight loss and obesity research is very high. Anyway, that is the end of the chapter. If I said anything to offend anyone, I apologize. You can leave me. Okay, that's it. I guess I'll talk to you next week.